Story 1. He threw an absolute fit at the quality of hummus in a Lebanese restaurant. He threw food around the table, yelled at the poor waitress, then stormed out without paying. Then we went to a pub and he was asked to take off his hat, and that was a mistake. I was recovering from an abusive relationship, so this guy was differently bad, which was apparently okay. I eventually had to block him and his many alternate accounts after he accused me of abuse and threatened to call the police. He had read The Ethical Slut and decided that he was polyamorous and that I had abused him through mutually agreeable monogamy. I now have a good therapist and self-esteem. Story 2. People would give me a weird look when I told them who I was dating and ask why. They would say he had a reputation for being an asshole, but maybe he's different once you get to know him. Turns out he was, in fact, an asshole. Story 3. So many. I feel like an idiot thinking back. But the biggest one. He kept saying, "I'm not good at relationships." Plot twist, he wasn't. Insert shocked Pikachu face. Story 4. Mine happened on the very first date. He said he was late because he was having trouble finding parking. He later told me he actually walked to the place from his nearby apartment. Sure, we all make harmless white lies, but all he did was lie the entire relationship. Story 5. That she didn't get along with anybody. She was an argumentative and controlling person in all of her personal relationships. I ignored all that and thought she would change, but after I was with her, I saw that she blamed everyone for her own shortcomings and had anger issues and mental issues and refused to get help. Story 6. She gave away her dog of 6 years because he got sick before I met her. Didn't really stop and think how insanely messed up that is. Makes me hate her thinking about it. Story 7. Oof, I ignored a lot. Him admitting he cheated on his ex multiple times. Having a lot of girls on his Snapchat and social media. Finding hair ties and girl items in his room around the time we became official. Love bombing. Flirted with other women. Teetering on the boundary between friendship and inappropriate. Story 8. Started seeing a 40-year-old female who accused every partner she's had since she was a freshman in high school of being abusive and controlling, including eventually both me and the guy she left me for. 1 is unfortunate. 2 or 3 means maybe some therapy is in order. 15 to 20 means you might be projecting a little bit. Spoiler. She was abusive and controlling. Story 9. When I met his friends, they all told me I could do so much better. If he was genuinely a good guy, his buddies wouldn't be trying to give me a heads up. He turned into a serial cheater and gaslighter. It was always everyone else's fault and not his, and everyone just made up lies about him just because. Story 10. Not necessarily proud of how I found out. I saw she got a text, looked over, and it was from a guy. She answered it and blurted out something her girlfriend just told her. I ignored it even though I knew. Lust, thinking you're in love, and a complete lack of self-confidence and worth made me just say okay and move on like nothing happened. Story 11. He threw a bottle of beer at me so hard and fast the bottle cap stuck in the wall. I should have left and never gone back. Yes, it got worse, and yes, I got out eventually. Story 12. Lack of any emotion through the years gradually, and before you know it, it is all gone and you end up despising the person you once loved because without emotion, no intimacy can happen or compassion. Story 13. Being told he had worried I wouldn't be intellectual enough for him, but not to worry because I had passed. First thought at the time was, Belland. Definitely should have trusted those instincts. Story 14. His parents kept telling me, "You do know he has anger issues, right?" And my dumb self was like, "It's okay. I love him." Those anger issues were a huge part of our ultimate breakup. When someone's family members warn you about their negative qualities, listen to them. Story 15. She literally tried to break up with me and told me she was bad for me, and I convinced her she wasn't. Turns out she was right. I was in that relationship for 6 years and married her. It was the most traumatic relationship of my life and took years of therapy to undo the damage. People will tell you who they are in many ways, and you need to listen. Story 16. It wasn't one red flag. It was red bunting. She basically told me the story of how she mistreated every boyfriend she had ever had, and there were a lot. I finally realized these were a warning, but she had shredded my heart and set fire to the pieces by then. Story 17. He date raped me post-graduation and I got engaged to him. I was confused and young. I felt like it was my way of holding him accountable. He was happy, he got the girl. I fell into a depression. I went home and finally dealt with it. I hope he is rotting in peace. Story 18. He constantly talked down about other women. He would comment on their weight, the clothes they wore, and would criticize their tattoos, literally anything. As time went on, I was no different when it came to facing his ridicule. I learned a difficult and forever life-altering lesson with him. Story 19. A real pattern of stories in which they were always the victim, with no apparent introspection or admission around their own role in any given issue or situation. And wouldn't you know it? Story 20. He was so sweet and shy when we met. When he told me his doctor diagnosed him as a sociopath, I was like, no you're not. Anyways, it wasn't long after that he started beating me. He was, in fact, a sociopath and he literally told me, but I was like, nah. Story 21. On the first date, she said, I'm kind of obsessive. She then proceeded to stalk me for a year after I broke up with her. Fortunately, we were both in the military, and she transferred to another command eventually. Story 22. It was a very short relationship, but early on we were at his parents' house, standing around the kitchen. His dad was headed to the store, and he asked his dad what he was going to the store for. His dad replied, "Oh, something's milk, bread. I'll probably pick up something for dinner," in the most average and normal tone of voice. I nodded. The guy I was seeing exploded and said, "I was just asking." My head spun around. I was so confused. How could anyone have interpreted his dad's calm, nonchalant grocery list as a personal attack? In hindsight, how unfazed his dad seemed should have indicated this wasn't a rare occurrence. Story 23. Honestly, I think I was the problem in my early relationships. I grew up with an abusive mom who told me she should have aborted me, and I think that affected me for a long time. I wasn't the best partner or the best version of myself. I didn't purposefully hurt anyone, but I can't say I didn't. Story 24. Lack of care for his younger brother. First time I slept over and we went to pick up breakfast for us and his younger brother. We didn't realize they messed up his brother's order. They legitimately gave us an untoasted English muffin, nothing else. It was literally a 2-minute drive, so I insisted we go back quickly as we just pulled into the driveway. He refused, didn't even offer to give his younger brother his order instead, and got mad when I offered mine up. Told his brother to deal with it, and I got in my car and drove to get the right order for his brother. I didn't mind as it was a 2-minute drive and I didn't want him eating a plain, untoasted English muffin. Plus, we were left to take care of him since their parents were out of town for business. Story 25. Everything I liked and enjoyed, he would make fun of me and ridicule me. I was young, around 18 or 19, and had never been in a relationship before. I was very much in love with him too. I felt like I was sad and pathetic, so I stopped doing what I loved and wouldn't tell him anything. I'm 29 now and have never been in another relationship as it seriously changed me. I'm getting back to myself. I know 10 years is a long time, but I'm accepting that now. I now do what I love. I read, I write, I paint, I watercolor. I am happy and content again. I feel like I've got myself back. It took years for me to accept myself again because of this person. I remember he made me go on a drug run because he said, "No one will think you have anything and you'll be fine. Just go get it and come to my work." When I did that for him, he said, "Thank God you're such a nerd." I was foolish and stayed with him. He used to cry after intimacy and say how good I was, and I used to be so confused. He ended it by cheating on me and telling me, "You look nothing like the girls I want to be with at work." Changed me. I'm now a single 29-year-old trying to navigate life and regain myself and my happiness. Story 26. Relentless pursuit after I rejected him. We are taught to think that pursuit means they are interested in us and that it's romantic to be chased. But really, it's a red flag that highlights their inability to respect the word no. After 5 years of an emotionally abusive relationship, I always paid attention to that. Story 27. The fact that he only seemed to show love or affection through gifts or financial things. Turns out the entire relationship was based around manipulation, financial abuse, and control. Took a lot of work to resolve that situation. Story 28. He was a mama's boy. Girl, no matter what, they never change and you'll never be first. Guess. And he'll cheat on you because the only person he needs to be loyal to is his mom. Story 29. The first time I saw my ex acting upset, snapping at his roommate while making dinner, I gently laid my hand on his arm and asked, "Is something wrong?" He yelled, "I am fine," and kept yelling at me all night, angry at me for prying. It turns out he would treat me like this every time he was upset for the next few years. Story 30. On our first date, he asked me out for dinner and a movie. We went to the movie first, and by the time we got to the restaurant, it was late, around 9 p.m. Because he had asked me out to dinner, I hadn't eaten beforehand and was absolutely starving. But when I said I was going to order a burger, he told me that it was too late for dinner, and I was only allowed dessert. Stupid, young, naive me should have seen the red flags right then, but since he was paying, I didn't argue. And because my family thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, it led to a horrible marriage to an abusive control freak. Thankfully, he's been my ex far longer than he was my boyfriend or husband. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Story 31. My 36 female, first month with my last boyfriend. I had plans to go to the Renaissance Fair with some friends and invited him, but he had to work. He acted super upset the night before that I was still going without him. Then the next morning, he called me saying he was having a stroke, 42 male, smoker, and I was like, "Oh my God, call 911. I'm on my way to your apartment." He says, "No, don't come over." So I wait. He calls me from the hospital that he drove to 30 minutes later and says his brother met him there. At this point, it's clear it wasn't a stroke, and I say, "Can I come meet you? Which hospital?" He says no. So I take my friends to the Renaissance Fair and text and call to check on him. He ends up flipping out on me, saying I should never have gone since he was in the hospital. I just thought since we had only been dating a month and his family was there, and he wouldn't cooperate in telling me which hospital to go to or where to meet him to see him, and he was fine, I didn't think canceling my plan was appropriate or even what he wanted. This set the stage for the rest of the relationship. He would never admit to what he wanted or needed and actually would tell me the opposite of what he needed. Sincerely, even when I said, but let me take care of you, or whatever. Histrionic displays and tantrums are a big red flag, and you need to leave immediately. It ended in him almost killing me during a tantrum on a camping trip 2 years later. They do not change for you once you show them you'll stay through their bad behavior. Story 32. When I heard him on the phone yelling at a customer service representative, I went on to experience physical domestic violence with that guy. Don't ignore if something gives you the literal ick. Story 33. So many, but probably the first time he made me cry with how mean he could be. I said he didn't seem excited to see me, and he said, "What do you want, a red carpet?" Story 34. Literally getting raped on his 18th birthday. Crying the whole time, he told me I was ruining his birthday. We dated another 2 years. I didn't even realize it was sexual assault until I was an adult. Story 35. The first night we had sex, I spent the night at his apartment. In the morning, we were lying in bed naked, and his doorbell rang. It was his ex-wife and his 4-year-old daughter. He had forgotten that he was watching her for the morning. I quickly grabbed my clothes and hid in his closet until his ex-wife left. Then he placed his daughter in front of the television and discreetly helped me out the door. Oh, he was also broke and turned out to be an alcoholic. Story 36. Finding out that he was in a relationship when we started dating. We were not official at the time, and when I found out, his friends were giving him trouble over something and made a passing comment about him still seeing a girl when we started seeing each other. I asked him about it later in private, and he told me that he had broken up with her before we officially became a couple, so I thought it was okay. He cheated on me later. To be young and dumb. Story 37. When he, who couldn't hold down a steady job, blamed me for 2 years for losing a job he had for a month, the reason supposedly being that he was staying with me and that's why he was late one day, but he was never late, at least not with me. Then everything got worse and he hit me. Luckily, I left him and the pandemic started. Story 38. She called me 5 minutes after I left her place and told me how much she missed me. I thought it was cute the first couple of times. The love bombing got pretty intense. That is intoxicating. Story 39. Concerns that are subtly manipulative so that it will guilt trip you into doing what he wants you to do. Example. Don't accept the overseas scholarship because you will not be able to afford living there or have me around for support. It translates into, please don't go away from me because I am afraid you will find someone else better than me. Story 40. I think, for me, it showed how focused he was on independence. He had come out of a codependent relationship before me, and he was so focused on his independence. Anytime we started to get close, he would pull away. I figured he would relax when he realized I wasn't his ex, but he never did. It turns out he has a really deep-seated fear of intimacy, and he blamed it on his ex being clingy. Also, a huge point, he wouldn't respond when I talked about something negative. He would go silent or slyly avoid the conversation, meaning he can't tolerate negative emotion. I'm sure he was always pulling out of their relationship, too, now that I think of it.